Donald Trump's victory speech as family, friends, and campaign staff took to the stage and celebrated. We heard some unusual thank yous you don't normally hear from any political campaign. For example, here's UFC CEO and Trump supporter Dana White.
I want to thank some people real quick. I want to thank the Nelk Boys, Aiden Ross, Theo Vaughn, Bussin' with the Boys, and last but not least, the mighty and powerful Joe Rogan.
Now, if you're not familiar with any of those names, White was shouting out just some of the massive podcasters and live streamers who embraced and platformed Donald Trump during his campaign. Now, it wasn't the first time Trump used new media to his advantage. The New York Times reported this week that Donald Trump has been doing this all of his adult life, from building his persona in the New York tabloids in the 80s to the reality TV craze that helped spawn The Apprentice and create the false impression that he was actually a successful businessman, to being an early adopter of Twitter, now called X. Donald Trump has always been a master at media manipulation. In all the election postmortems about how Trump won the presidency again, we have to acknowledge that despite being the oldest man ever elected president, Donald Trump was ahead of the curve in an ever-changing media landscape. And instead of subjecting himself to fact-checking from the likes of 60 Minutes, Trump was able to reach tens of millions of American voters in a fact-free, safe space, casually mixing talk about golf, drugs, or whatever with his campaign message. You know, the weave. It paid off big time, not only because of the sheer amount of voters he was able to reach, but the type of voters he reached. Younger voters, and particularly younger men, the so-called bro vote. According to NBC News exit polling, Trump picked up a larger proportion of voters under 30 than any Republican presidential candidate since 2008. With men under 30, Trump beat Harris by 2 points after losing to Joe Biden with this very same group by 11 points back in 2020. The Trump strategist credited with this idea, 18-year-old Barron Trump. Two sources familiar with the strategy told NBC News Trump's youngest son was behind the campaign pivot toward influential male podcasters. A senior Trump advisor told Politico's Deep Dive podcast every single recommendation he has had has turned out to be absolute ratings gold that has broken the internet. Joining me now to weigh in on all this, Paulo Ramos, MSNBC contributor and author of Defectors, The Rise of the Latino Far Right and What It Means for America. Hayes Brown, writer and editor at MSNBC Daily, and Dean Obeidallah, MSNBC Daily columnist and host of SiriusXM's The Dean Obeidallah Show. So I'll start with you, Paula, because there's this kind of myth that the vice president did not do enough podcasts. And that's not true. I mean, she did several podcasts. She did her own alternative media outlets. She was on Call Her Daddy, Shannon Sharp's podcast. You know, there are things out there that she did. She may not have done the bro vote ones, but she definitely went on, or the bro, shows, but she definitely did her own. Do you think that there's merit to this idea that Trump's embrace of this type of cultural phenomenon, media phenomenon, was different than the way the vice president did?
I think so, because I think he was doing that all the time, constantly. And think about his last day before the election. He was in Pennsylvania, and he looked at his crowd, and he said, all right, I'm going to go off teleprompter because I want to speak truth. So I think that kind of tells you what the strategy has been, that for over a year, he has been speaking his version of truth in this other ecosystem for months and months. And I think that in that world is where the sort of MAGA crowd has also been speaking their version of truth that is never captured in the polls and in the numbers and in the stats and in sort of cable TV, right? A version of truth where they get to say whatever they feel, whatever they want. They get to expose their grievances, the sexism, the misogyny, to the point that perhaps, and I was thinking about this, like the MSG Puerto Rico comments, maybe in our ecosystem, we were all horrified by that, right? Because here we fact check, we sort of point the audience towards moral clarities. But in that ecosystem, it was so normalized, right? They've been saying that language for so long that it didn't end up being this huge blow for the Trump campaign.
So she brings up a really interesting point about this comedian Tony Hinchcliffe, right? When he made those comments, vulgar comments about Puerto Rico being an island of garbage in the middle of the ocean. I think everyone who's watching that was shocked. But to Paulo's point, he is a comedian. He kind of has this, shock jock to him factor. And so, they kind of brushed it off saying like, it's not a thing. Like people who know him know that's his comedy. What does that tell you just about the information streams in this country and the polarization that exists?
we live in more and more silos. We don't even live in the same planet. We share the soil with people that get their news and their information, their data, and their comedy from different worlds. And every now and then they intersect, and we are stunned. We're like, what is going on? Everyone's like, oh, that's a Kill Tony, whatever, the guy. Yeah. They're like, everyone knows him. Friends tell me that. I'm like, what? Friends who know him from the comedy club world in New York. Like, that's what he does. So they got that. We're like, this is outrageous. But I'll say this, look, Vice President Harris joined this campaign late. We all know that. I think in 2028, you're going to see Democrats, they're already running, to be honest, for the nomination, make podcasts, make wildly popular shows like the Dean Obeidallah show, one of the key shows to go on. I'm just going to say that might be a good show. But they're going to go, podcasts can be
Did you get any other presidential candidates in this election cycle?
Not U.S. presidential candidates. Other countries, like the Palestinian candidates, I had them on. But look, the other thing is Trump got 2 bites. He got the podcast audience and he got the mainstream press for going on that. Yeah. So it was kind of very effective in that way. Joe Rogan had 47 million people watch Trump on YouTube do that. You go on a show, except for yours, most shows don't get that kind of ratings on cable news anymore.
Yeah, so me and Joe Rogan are kind of going head to head.
You're like the Arab Rogan.
Week to week, it really varies, But I do want to, speaking of Joe Rogan, right? I didn't watch the 3 hours of it. I couldn't watch the 3 hours of it, but I watched a lot of it. There is not a lot of fact checking in this. And I get that. That's his style. His whole approach is like, I just want to get to know the person. Mm-hmm. It's hard for me to imagine that after 9 years of Donald Trump on the scene, you really get to know who Donald Trump is, because also Donald Trump really sells himself to whoever he's speaking to. He is different things to different people at any given moment. So the idea that you're really getting to know the man is a bit of a stretch, but that's how he builds it.
Except for the fact that the people listening to those podcasts were the ones who were, in their teens, maybe, or younger when Donald Trump was first president. Right. So they are just getting to know him. I remember before the election, there was a TikTok trend that went around where Gen Zers were just realizing about the Access Hollywood tape. Right. They had never seen it before. They had no idea what it was about. They're like, what is going on here? So I do think there is something to be said for Trump introducing himself to these audiences. And honestly, reading that New York Times piece that you referenced, it only just hit me that, Trump rallies, they are a stream of consciousness in need of an editor. They are just a one-person podcast stream. So no wonder it sounds so familiar, why he's so comfortable in this space and why so many people listening to him, whereas we listen to the rallies, what he's talking about, they're used to just hearing, picking up pieces that flow over them in the course of the 3 hours that they're listening to Joe Rogan, just little bits and pieces, and clinging to what they are listening for, as opposed to getting lost in the weave like we do, trying to figure out exactly what the heck he's talking about.
Part of the postmortem analysis, I'm sure you've heard this as well, and probably he's really excited about it, is where is the Democrat like Joe Rogan? Why don't the Democrats have a Joe Rogan?
How hard is the fight? I'm sitting with you.
And so I was, joking aside, is that the right question though? I mean, people have also responded to that by pointing out, saying at one point, Joe Rogan actually was a fan of Bernie Sanders. Mm-hmm. And the fact that the Democratic Party did not do more outreach to him, did not have a constant kind of connection with him, so to speak, is probably a reason why they lost him in the end.
I think at the very least, we need to understand that world. We were talking about Joe Rogan. Guess who's a big part of his audience? Latinos. Over 30% of his audience are Latinos, right? Young Latino men. And so we weren't really talking about that either. And I do think the fear, though, is that, to your point, we are literally living in two realities, right? And the day of the election, every single voter noted that democracy was their top issue. And 3 out of 4 people said that they were concerned about the state of democracy. But we all had completely different versions of what that threat meant, because our ecosystems were so completely different in the way that we were all talking about democracy. And so we better start understanding what they're saying there, because those are now becoming the trusted voices that are sort of shaping the way that people are thinking about democracy. And that's important.
What's your take on it?
I think that I agree that we should be listening and figuring out what they're saying in these mediums, but I think that this is the new version of Democrats need their own Fox News, right? This is just chasing to see okay, where are the conservatives talking? What are they where are they conversing on all these issues, and saying we need a version of that too. But Joe Rogan, he was popular before he had his podcast. He was on a popular TV show. He was a game show host. He had an audience before becoming the Joe Rogan of podcast world, of the right wing bro.
Are you taking a dig at Dean, saying he was in it? It sounds like you're saying he's like.
I was on a Comedy Central special in 2008. So
I'm saying Dean's a game show.
And if you were up in the middle of the night, you probably saw that special. You know, like
Byron Allen's Comics Unleashed 2012. I'm there. I'm not sure why you missed me, Hayes.
I'm so
but
sorry.
It's fine.
Wait, hold on. But, you know, genuinely speaking about this kind of, I've watched a lot of these podcasts, and it's just kind of like getting together and you kind of shooting the breeze about these topics. It's not, I don't want to say it's not journalistic. It has a journalistic value because it gives insight into one's thinking. But it doesn't replace actual journalism where there is fact-checking. And I feel like there is probably a specific reason why they wanted to do these, because you are not getting fact-checked in real time.
Absolutely. That is the conscious decision by Donald Trump to go on with Joe Rogan. So you're not getting facts, but you know what you're getting? You're getting to know Donald Trump as a person. So if you didn't know him well, you listen for 3 hours. At the end of 3 hours, whoever that person is, if you've liked it, they're like your friend. They have a connection that's unlike normal political person and someone on, like with you or Joy Reid or someone else. It's a personal connection, and that's a winning strategy to get to know the person.
But it's a parasocial connection. Like, it's not an actual real one. I feel like over the next 4 years, it'll be interesting to see what happens when all of the promises and the Donald Trump they think that they know turns out to be someone else entirely different.